so great. When we were on our way up here, I saw the line of cars that was just all through, from the freeway all the way to here. It's amazing to see so many people here. Thank you guys so much for coming. We have been through so much these past several years, have we not? So much together. Don't you feel like it's a family reunion? I do. Every time I come to one of these things, I'm like, oh, and I'm from Southern Missouri, so we hug everybody. So I'm like, oh, it's so good to see you. It's so good to see you. It does. It feels like a family reunion, and we have been through so much. And there are a lot of people in this country that have been through so much. As a country, we have been. Just last weekend, horrible tragedy unfolded. We had a madman walk up into a theater, midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises, and open fire on a theater full of innocent people, children. I think the youngest that was injured was, what, 3, 4 months old, 6 months old, something like that, an infant. And of course, the headlines, the story broke. I woke up that morning just shocked, in tears. It's horrible when something like that happens. Whenever you have a tragedy, obviously you have a set of victims created from that tragedy. But what I find absolutely reprehensible is when we have what is supposed to be the watchdog for the people decide to make another new set of victims in its reporting. It's reckless, it's malicious, slanderous reporting. And that's what happened. Another set of victims was created after the Aurora shooting. Brian Ross, a reporter that I have not had the misfortune of meeting, his first response was to blithely talk about this tragedy. And then because he's such an expert in journalism, he decides to Google the name James Holmes. Because Google is always right, and the first results that it always comes up with are always right. He Googles the name James Holmes, up comes some results. Some of the results said there's a James Holmes associated with the Occupy movement and the black bloc tactics. And then some other results said that, oh, here's a James Holmes who's associated with the Tea Party. Guess which one Brian Holmes runs with? The Tea Party. And some poor man named James Holmes, who is not the one who went into the theater, who simply had the misfortune of having the same name as the guy who committed the tragedy, committed the massacre, found himself at the receiving end of all of these death threats because of Brian Ross's irresponsible, malicious, slanderous, defamatory, craptastic reporting. I'm a fan of adjectives, especially the pretty ones describing our media. And I started thinking about all of the different examples, by the way. This isn't the first time this has happened. I immediately thought of Tucson, Arizona, this very leisurely Saturday afternoon. I wake up Saturday morning. It was one of the only weekends that I was home. One of the only weekends that I wasn't on a plane going somewhere. And turn on the news, the Safeway massacre had happened, and the news reporters say, oh, guy could have been a Tea Partier. We don't even know how many victims there are yet, but we're sure that the guy was a Tea Partier. And I was talking with, a few months after all of this happened, I went down to Tucson to help rally with the Tucson Tea Party down there, a great group of patriots. Trent and Jennifer Humphreys were the organizers of the Tucson Tea Party. They just happened to be driving with their small children to go get some milk and laundry detergent. They happened to drive past the Safeway on their way home. They saw the flashing lights, knew something had happened. By the time they got into their driveway, the media had descended upon their front yard because some clown with a press badge decided to say that it had to be a Tea Partier who shot up Safeway. And so Trent and Jennifer, being Tea Party organizers, everybody pointed their fingers at them. Another set of victims created in a tragedy by a media that cares more about defaming this movement and the people in it than doing accurate reporting. That's the truth. Of course, And I wrote bullet points so I could stay in my time frame. Of course, this is also the same media, by the way, that refused to report on the fact that the Occupy Wall Street movement, how many rapes have occurred, how many people have been arrested because of vandalism, how many people have been arrested. One guy in the Occupy DC movement shot up the White House. Did you hear about that in the media? No, you didn't. Because they liked the White House. Nancy Pelosi said, bless them. So you didn't hear about that. I made a little list, by the way, on this green card here, of all of the horrible tragedies that have occurred with madmen, mass tragedies, and all of them have been blamed on us. We had the Discovery Channel hostage taker. Remember that? Oh, he might be a Tea Partier that hates the Discovery Channel. No, he was an environmental nut who read Media Matters and loved the Inconvenient Truth film, as said so on his Facebook page, but you didn't hear about that in the media, did ya? What about the Times Square bomber? Mayor Michael Bloomberg had said, oh, well, this guy, he was probably reacting to Obamacare. Remember that one? No, he was an Islamic fundamentalist. You know, the one that Michelle Bachmann's supposed to be lying about. Then, of course, there was Alexander Stack, the guy who flew the plane into the IRS building. He was supposed to be a big Tea Partier too, right? No, he wasn't. No, he was a communist. I mean, we could go on and on. The Pentagon shooter, Fort Hood. Remember Fort Hood, another great terrorist attack on our nation's soil committed by an Islamic fundamentalist that Michelle Bachmann's lying about? All of this stuff, they's blamed on us. I'm going to tell you something, folks, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a bigot. I'm not a racist. I'm a mother. I am a patriot, like you. And if the media does not want to give us column inches, we're going to take it. If the media doesn't want to report on the fact that here you have 14,000 people in this auditorium who paid their way to be here to stand up for conservatism, we will. We don't need the mainstream media. I didn't see a network truck outside. That's all right. Nobody watches them anyway. No, we don't care about your column inches. We don't care if we make your talking points that night. I don't care if you want to have a bunch of clowns to get together at NBC or MSNBC or whatever dying broadcast breed that is and talk about us. We don't need you, you know, because we took over talk radio. That's ours now. That's ours. Yeah. We took over talk radio. We took over cable news. One of my favorite things, we took over your internets, liberals. They create it, we come and dominate. That's okay, we got all that. So you won't report on us, we'll report on what we do. And we'll make you all look like clowns to the point where you guys have to cover us because you're losing to us. We've turned into their competition. And events like this will be up all, what's going on here is going to be all throughout the blogosphere. We have our conservative citizen journalists, our penny presses that have been helping lead the way in this grassroots movement. As much as mainstream media has tried to bash us down, there's more of us than them. Something else, too, that I'm asked a lot as to why I get so involved in media criticism. I studied journalism for a while, and then I said, screw this. I've watched bias edited into my stuff. I've seen what happens behind the scenes. And then I, of course, decided to come back into journalism again to bash it, which is even funner. But this is why it's so important. This is why it's so important to pay attention to what goes on, even your local news, the stuff that isn't as glamorous as the national news. It's still important for you to pay attention to what happens in your local papers. Because the headlines for today's headlines are tomorrow's history. We have to remember that. Everything that is being reported on right now, be it in television, be it in your newspapers, all of that is going to be history for when your children grow up to read about what we did right now. For when your grandchildren grow up and they want to read about how grandma and grandpa fought back against the man to take back their country. We are the counterculture movement. I want what we are doing here today to be accurately reported. I want it to be reflected. I want every dirty detail of this administration to be burnt in the history books. I want everyone to see what happened, and then I want them to see how we fought them and took it back. The media is supposed to be our watchdog, not Barack Obama's lapdog. So we created, as I was telling you, our own penny presses. We became our own watchdogs. We're a free people. It is our privilege and our responsibility. We'll police the government, and you know what? There's enough of us, and we're good enough at it. We'll police the media too. It's propaganda arm. We've got our eyes on them. So when they want to do some salacious reporting, we're going to call them out on it. Like Brian Ross, like with Tucson, like with all of this other list in my hand, we're going to call them out on it. And remember, we're fighting for the future. We're fighting for history. This is our country, our media. We're going to make sure that it's accurately reflected in the history books. It's going to take all of us to do it. Get connected. Get on Facebook. Get on Twitter. Get a blog. Read them, comment, support them. That's what it's going to take, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all very much.